A while ago, Justice of the Supreme Court, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., observed that whereas life is action and passion, it is required of a person to take part in the action and passion of his time at the peril of being judged not to have lived. This morning, I am greatly honored to have as our speaker a graduate of the Portsmouth Abbey School in 1988, a man who as a student was one of my students, and then went on. He went on to be, today he is the Chief of Strategic Plans and Policy for the Department of Defense Criminal Investigation Task Force, which conducts investigations of suspected terrorists, and as Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Media and Public Affairs within the Executive Office of the President of the United States for George W. Bush. He has held numerous communications and public affairs positions in government, the U.S. House of Representatives, the House Budget Committee, National Republican Congressional Committee, on local and congressional political campaigns, and he is a Reserve Officer of the United States Navy, shown as a graduate of Connecticut College, and received his master's degree in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College. I would just like to show you, if Bob could, that's one of the things you do if you work in the White House. Mr. Spicer is indeed the bunny on an Easter egg roll. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce the bunny. Here he is.
I told Mr. Hobbins earlier today that that's the last time I'm ever sending him a Christmas card. But that was indeed an honor. I asked him about a month ago what I should speak on, and he said, let me talk to some students. And so today I'm going to talk to you guys about the role of social media, Twitter and Facebook, in terms of Greek, the classics, Greek and Latin in a post-Renaissance era world. Sorry, that's not what they want to hear. Anyway, sorry. I want to give you guys an idea. So I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about how I got to Portsmouth, and then what I thought would be of particular interest is telling you guys a little bit about where I think what I've learned since I've left here, and hopefully find something that you find interesting and take with you. So before I got to Portsmouth, sorry, that's my class rank letter. I don't know how that got in there. I was 20th. I had always wanted to go to Portsmouth, and the reason I put that up there, that is the brochure from 1989. That's me on the right. I still look the same, you can tell. And I'm extolling the virtues of Portsmouth. And I think why I came here, when I was growing up, my family is from here in Rhode Island. My grandmother always affectionately spoke about the boys from the Priory. And in always glowing terms, the smart kids went there, the good-looking kids went there. And so as a young kid, I thought, this is where I'm going to go. And I think for a while, in 5th and 6th grade, my parents kind of just said, I'm sure you'll go there, that'll be fun, great, great, great. And then they started to get mail from the Abbey, and they were like, hey, what do you do? Where's this coming from? And I said, well, I signed up to get the brochures. Slowly, I started to say, well, there's an open house. Do you mind if I go down there? I had no idea how great the food was here in the Winter Garden. They take that away, as you all know, once you get in. They don't tell you that. I became really interested and wanted to go here. I found something about Portsmouth was special, and I wanted to be part of it. And so for the latter part of my 7th grade year, my mom drove me around to various schools in Rhode Island, but my heart was set on going to Portsmouth. And I knew I had to be there. So long story short, I ended up applying and getting in. For the first 2 years, I was a day student. I would walk or get dropped off at the bus stop in Barrington, then take the RIPTA bus, get dropped off to the top of Cory's Lane, and then walk down and had a great 4 years. Then I went on to Connecticut College, so I was from Rhode Island. I came all the way to Portsmouth from Barrington. That was a big deal. And then I went to Connecticut, which was even farther. That would have stayed away. After I went to Connecticut College, I drawn an interest in getting involved in politics. So I went off to Washington, D.C., as you can imagine, and that was where I really found my passion, what I wanted to do. And so, as I mentioned, what I want to talk to you guys today about are some of the lessons that I learned after I graduated from college and went to Washington. And so I've got 17 what I call rules, and none of them, absolutely none of them, are going to blow your mind. There's nothing in here that you're going to go, wow, I didn't know that. But I hope to add a perspective to these that you may not have heard and understand why they matter to me, and hopefully they can help you going forward. So the first rule I'm going to give you is there's no job for anything. Well, what does that mean? So I graduated from Connecticut College. I go down to Stanford Yacht Club. I've been on the sailing team here and then at Connecticut College. I got a job right after I graduated coaching a sailing team down at Stanford. One of my students had a father who was a big muckety-muck down in Washington, D.C. And she said, well, if you're moving down there and you want to get involved in politics, you know, my dad would, I'm sure, be glad to meet with you. So I set up a time when I got down there. I went to this fancy K Street restaurant, which is where all the lobbyists work and play down there. And I get dressed up and I go down to lunch and I sit down, and so he says, so, you know, I heard you wanted to come down and get a job, da-da-da. What do you want to do? And my answer was, I'll do anything. And he looks at me and he says, there are no jobs for anything. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he looks at me and he says, look, I'm glad to help you however I can. I'll make a phone call, but I'm not a college placement office. I'm not a job placement office. I don't know what you want. I don't even know you that well. I don't know what your skills are. I don't know what. If you tell me what you want to do you want to work on Capitol Hill? Do you want to work for an association? Do you want to go into press? Do you want to work for a cause? Do you want to work for the Smithsonian? Do you care about the fine arts or Republican politics, or what do you care about? Because I can help you with that. But you need to help yourself first before you come to me and ask me to do that for you. And I've always remembered that, because now as I've evolved in my career, usually once or twice a week, I'll get a call from someone who graduates from the Abbey or from Portsmouth or from someone that I met along the way, their brother, sister, cousin, etc. And they say, can you sit down with so-and-so? I'll absolutely always have time for them. But at least 50% of the time, they walk into my office and I say, what can I help you? What do you want to do? I don't know. Well, there's no job for I don't know. There's no job for anything. And I look at that as not just a question about jobs, but it's colleges, whatever. When you go sit down with that college counselor, there are probably plenty of times when people are going to want to help you, but they're going to expect you to come in and have done your homework. And that doesn't mean that you have to know everything, right? You don't have to have an answer. You can say, I generally have an interest in something like this. I think I want to go here. Here's why. Here are some of the things. Do you agree? But it comes down to not wasting people's time. And so think about what you're asking people to do for you, and they're much more likely to not only help you, but also be productive when they help you, because they can do stuff. So the next one, think before you speak. That's something that every one of your mothers had told you. I'm amending that. Think before you tweet, think before you post, think before you upload. When I graduated from Portsmouth, that's my yearbook page. And it's obviously a little fuzzy, intentionally. But unless you know who Sergeant McGrath is, my parents are here, so I'm not going to tell you. You do not know what that means. So anyone who went to go look back at that's all, you know, I assume people still do this kind of stuff. But it's all written in code words, and we thought we were really cool, and we write out stuff. But that's how we kind of posted then, right? That's what we told people, and that's how you do it. But right now, I have a staff of about 30. There's about 15 interns at any given time, and every single one of them that we either, who looks for a job or even an internship, we do a background check on them, just to find out, is there anything, you know, do they have a criminal record? Is there something inappropriate that would reflect bad on the company? Colleges do this now. Last week, and I was actually waiting, you know, I was trying to think about how to talk about this. Tuesday of last week, this is what shows up in the vetting report. That gentleman is from Rhode Island. He wants to work in my office. He's not getting a job. That's the tip of the iceberg, my friends. There's a lot of other things in there that are not appropriate for the Portsmouth Abbey School. But there's a lot of folks that sit around and post and tweet and do stuff, and I would argue that think before you do it. In much the same way that your mothers told you when you were kids, think before you speak, think before you upload, tweet, put something on Facebook, because it doesn't go away. And this kid, in this example, is not getting a phone call. The only time that these reports come across my desk is when they say, hey, FYI, this guy's from your home state, do you care that we're kicking him out? You know, we're not going to accept him. And I said, no. But his Twitter account wasn't much better, and there were a couple other things on blogs that he had written that I just found particularly offensive and inappropriate. But too many times people think, oh, well, who cares? This doesn't have anything to do with my job, and it was 10 years ago. But too many times, I would just argue that think these days when you're putting stuff up, whether it's your privacy settings or frankly, I would just argue that you shouldn't be posting or doing stuff in much the same way that you shouldn't be saying certain things that you don't want to come across as inappropriate or told backstories. For any of you who recall, when Mitt Romney was running for president this year, there was a big expose in the summer before the convention about his boarding school and how he dealt with his fellow students. There was a national story. So there's a lot of times you think, well, it's just high school. No one's going to remember this, or this wasn't a big deal. Trust me, you may not run for president, but I think there's a lot of folks, if my class is any indication, of people in this auditorium that are going to want to do fantastic, earth-shattering things in this world. And the last thing that you want is something in your past that you do now to affect your ability to do great things in the future. So I would just argue that is something to think about. Slide 9. Excuse me, rule 3. Showing up is half the battle, and the other half is showing up early and often. This kind of goes back to this idea of the people that we look to hire and how things happen. In 1995, I'd been in Washington for about 2 years, and I decided I really wanted to get into media and public affairs. The problem was that everyone wanted someone with experience, and I couldn't get any experience because everyone wanted someone with experience, so I had to find ways, and I was searching, and I would do anything. And so about that time, Senator Bob Dole was going to announce that he was what they call an exploratory committee. He was officially thinking about running for president, so he was going to open up this office. Well, they didn't have any paid positions open, but they said, well, we need someone to do the senator's campaign clips every morning in our press office. And I said, okay, well, that's in the press office. I'll do that. And they said, well, what does it mean? What do I need to do? And they said, well, the newspapers come down from New York on the train at 4:30 in the morning. Someone's got to be up at Union Station to pick him up at 5 a.m., walk him over to his office a couple blocks from the Capitol, because he had a political office, and cut them, put them up nice and pretty, put them through the copier, and then have them ready and on the senator's desk by 6:30 in the morning. I'll do it. But that's the kind of thing that's going to get you noticed and have you stand out. In this day and age, when I look at people in terms of their resumes and their experiences, it's the difference between people who go that extra mile to show up, to stay late, to get it done right the first time. But almost up until this year, we had an exception to the rule, but almost every one of our entry-level people at my office was a previous intern. My view was I could actually road test them. I could see, are they going to screw up? Do they have good manners? Is their work product good? Do they do things right the first time? But those are the kind of things that make the difference between you and every other applicant out there. And that goes for an internship, your first job, applying to college, your summer job. But it's those recommendations that are going to make the rest of your life a lot easier when people can call up and say, you know what, yeah, I had them as an intern. Man, they were here early. They stayed late. They did it right the first time. So getting there and getting there early and often can actually make the difference. I'll tell you a downside to that. I was really honored when I got into the Abbey. It was a big deal, as I said. But it was an even bigger deal when I got named a prefect. And I know it sounds kind of corny, but it was a big deal. I always remember the idea of working really hard to get in here, and then one day you get named a prefect, and you thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So I get my letter in the mail. I'm sure my parents came home and said how awesome I was. And we used to give out pins. Do you guys still get pins? Good. I think for the amount of money you get paid, you should get a pin. And so we didn't have cell phones or anything. And after my first 2 years, we started carpooling. And some mornings we didn't come straight to school. We'd stop and have breakfast or do whatever. So we pull in one morning and we're walking in, and these guys a couple of my buddies walking up going, "Oh, dude, you're in trouble." I said, "What? What's the big deal?" I called, whoever was the other day student prefect, and he checked everyone in. "What's the big deal?" "Oh no, Father Francis gave everyone their pins this morning." So at the assembly, he sat right there. Well, I don't know this because I wasn't there. And he called every prefect up to get their pin. But I didn't show up that day. So guess where I had to show up? In his office. To explain to him why, as a prefect, someone that was going to help be a student leader, I wasn't even showing up to assemblies. It wasn't exactly the nicest introduction to Father Francis that I've ever had. But again, showing up gets you there. Not showing up can be somewhat detrimental sometimes. Thank goodness he found some degree of humor into it, I think. But it works both ways. Rule 4, take responsibility when you screw up and you'll be rewarded. What do I mean by that? You're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. Everyone does. How you handle those mistakes is what makes the difference in life. I have found in my experience that when you're young, and actually when you're old, when you make a mistake and you own up to that mistake and explain how it's not going to happen again and the corrective actions that you're taking, 9 times out of 10, you will actually exit that problem better than you entered it. More and more people are making excuses about the problems. I couldn't do it. My dog ate the homework. My computer crashed. I didn't tip that over because... But when you stop every once in a while and say, "I'm sorry, I screwed up. Here's what happened. I didn't plan this on time. I've already recognized that here's the 3 things that I'm going to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again. The corrective action. I apologize to the students if this affected or whoever." Most people recognize that people are fallible. They're going to make mistakes. How you deal with them will make a big difference between how you're thought of. Rule 5, never give up. Not exactly rocket science, but I'll give you a good, this is more of a media story than anything else. In 1988, I'm working for a congressman from Florida. He has 2 constituents of his that came to him with a problem and asked him to solve it. Donna and Ed Bateland. And the problem was they owned this store in a strip mall down in Florida. And these lawyers were going by strip malls and suing everyone for not complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the dirty little secret is that no one really is complying with the Americans with Disabilities Act. That there's all these nuances in it that door is not exact, isn't the exact specs, and this chair isn't this high, whatever. So you can always find something. So these lawyers were being real shysters and trying to go through and just sue everyone. And they were saying, "We're going to sue you for $10,000, but if you pay $2,000 today and settle with us, we'll take the complaint away." Well, the Batelands said, "No way, we're fighting this." Because the problem is, the Batelands are both paraplegics that ran a store that serviced people who were handicapped. They sold stuff to people who were disabled, whether it was wheelchairs or whatever, and their view that some lawyer was going to sue them over the Americans with Disabilities Act was absolutely preposterous. So they call the congressman and they say, "Hey, can we do something legislatively to fix this?" He writes the bill and he says to me, "Sean, you're my press secretary, go out and get some media on this." I literally called everyone I knew. I was going, "Here's a great story." Nah, pass, 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 pass. Congressman, "Hey, you got anything on this? Can we even get a little story on this?" "No, no one's covering it." You can't, and it became personal. He kept saying, you can't get even a local weekly paper to get a column on this. And I was calling everybody. "Please, can you guys, this is a great story. Here's the human interest in this." Pass. Finally, one day, some guy at USA Today says, "I'll tell you what, we're going to let you write an op-ed." They do this thing, for those of you guys who still read USA Today, that's point counterpoint. So they said, "We'll let you write up something, and then we'll find someone that writes the opposite opinion on why your law is not necessarily the best." So we do it. And in a congressman's office, in the DC office, there's only about 8 people that actually work there. There's usually one person that answers the phone, but oftentimes they're helping constituents who are here from DC or from somewhere else or working on something. And so this kid, I'm sure, was doing something else, and the phone just starts to ring back through the office. So I pick it up, congressman's office, blah, blah, blah. And this voice on the other end says, "I'd like to talk to the person that's responsible for this piece that's in USA Today." I said, "Well, my name's Sean. I'm the congressman's press secretary. I'm responsible for that. Can I help you?" The other says, "Yes, this is Clint Eastwood. I'd like to..." "That's right." "Okay, nut job." And it was Clint Eastwood. Honest, and so he says, I had the same problem. Some guy comes in and sues my restaurant in Carmel because of the door jam, and it was completely ridiculous because I had actually specifically modeled it. I'd like to help you. So I go back to the congressman, hey, you got any more press off this? And I said, yeah, I have. Guess who I've got now? And it was a media circus for 10 days after that, because Eastwood says, what can I do to help? And I said, I have a list. But the point was is that at any given time, I could have just given up and said, hey, I've called every reporter I know. No one wants to write on this. But I didn't, and you're going to give it up. And that's just, I mean, that's not going to happen to you or to anyone else. I mean, but the point is that I think there are times when you look and you think, I've exhausted every avenue. But sometimes when you keep going that extra mile, really great things can happen. And you just never know when it's going to be. The underlying thing would be to say that persistence does pay off. Be prepared. Wow, really insightful, Sean. What is that? Let me give you the best example I have in this. 2004, I'm hiring someone for our press office. And she had come in, this was her second interview. It was for an entry-level position. So we have the door closed, and we're doing this interview, going back and forth about what her skills are, and is she qualified, blah, blah, blah. When my boss walks in, she's one of the House, a member of Congress who's in leadership. I said, oh, excuse me, Congresswoman, Mrs. Jenny. She's applying to be one of our press assistants. She says, oh, pleasure to meet you, Jenny. Good to see you. Da, 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 da. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Well, I'm from blah, 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 and I like to water ski, and who cares? Then the boss says, so Jenny, what do you know about me? Why do you want to work for me? And she sits there and she goes, I like doing press, and my boss stops and says, no, I'm sorry. Let me just, what specifically, what issues that I'm involved in do you find interesting? Is there something, and she says, well, boss leaves, girl looks at me, she goes, I did not expect to meet her. I was not ready for this. And I thought to myself, you've got to be kidding me. You came to an interview. You didn't even look up the background on the woman that you were going to ultimately work for. You weren't ready. Needless to say, about 10 minutes later after the interview offers, I see my boss walking down the hall, she says, can I come over? I said, yes. She goes, we're clear that you're not even considering her, right? I said, no, ma'am, not gonna. But in this day and age with the internet, there's really no excuse not to have done your homework. Whether it's going into an interview, meeting someone in an informational interview, but there are so many times when people come in to meet me and they start talking about things that are clearly in my background or that are in my my bio or that you can see on LinkedIn, and I'm going, do you realize you're telling me about something that you're contradicting something that I know a lot about, and you sound really ridiculous. But if you had taken the time to prepare yourself, and you think about it, whether it's college preparation, you're going in for that interview, or a summer job, take the time to know, to do the background, to know what you're walking into, to know your audience, to know the gentleman or the woman that you're going to speak to know a little bit about the institution that you're visiting, whatever it is. But there's truly no excuse, and it is a deal breaker. Right then and there, I don't expect people to know everything. I get that. You're not going to have a really deep understanding of a particular topic. But you are expected to know the basics. And that's something that you really should take the time to do. Have a plan, but be flexible. So I knew when I moved to DC I wanted to get involved in politics. It was something I felt really passionate about. I wanted to do it. And I knew that I thought I'm going to work on Capitol Hill, and then I'm going to go from this office to this office. But as I was telling you a minute ago, it's not easy getting a job doing press, because especially on the House side, in the congressional office, there's one person that does press, one. So you're asking, a member of Congress is asking that individual to put their entire trust in you to be their spokesperson, to talk on the record about what they believe, their position on things. It's a tremendous amount of responsibility. And people are somewhat reluctant to do it with people who are 22 years old that don't have a lot of experience. It's just, right? It doesn't seem to be something that you want to put your life in the hands of someone who's saying, trust me, I'm pretty good at this, I think. So a guy comes along to me and says, there's a guy named Larry Welsh. He's going to run for Congress out in western Pennsylvania. He's in a primary. He's going to lose. And if he wins the primary, he'll still definitely lose the general. Would you like the job? And I said, absolutely. I think my mom was probably like, so let me get this straight. You're going to quit a job that in DC that has like health benefits to go move to a place that you've never been before, to work with a guy that you've never met, that you don't know, that you're admitting is going to lose, and the upside is what? I said, because my plan isn't working and I need to adapt it to get to where I want. Because as soon as I can say I've done press, I can then get hired. Because people say you have experience. And sometimes you have to start somewhere that you didn't want to start to get to where you go. And so, you know, it's interesting because whether it's college or a job or a relationship, sometimes you think this is where I want to be. And the direct line is from here to there. But sometimes you can't drive that route, and you have to think, what's the other way to get where I want? I didn't want to go to Western Pennsylvania. That was not my plan. I didn't know anybody there. It was very lonely. We did lose, and I didn't make a ton of money. But when I got out of there, this congressman calls me from New Jersey and says, I understand that you just finished a race out in Western PA. I'm looking for someone to manage my campaign, and I see you've got experience. And I said, yes, I do. But it was that detour in my plan that got me back on track of where I want to go. So sometimes, whether it's moving somewhere that you might not want to move or going to a college that you might want to go because you want to get to some other place, if you keep your final destination in mind and have a plan, as long as you're flexible, you can still get there. It's the rigidity that sometimes takes you off track. Rule 8, trust your gut. If there's two rules that I think are fundamental to life that I've got in this presentation, this is one of them. I would argue that every decision that you make, almost every single one of them comes down to what's in your gut. Whether you're choosing what school to go to, what person to date, where to move, if it feels right and you're excited about it, it's the right move. If it doesn't feel right, it's the wrong move. If you have to call your friends and ask them to talk you into doing something, it's not right. And as a segue, I would argue that this is ethically true in the same way. If you know that doing something is not what feels right, that you feel that taking that extra something or peeking at the test isn't right, it's not right. But your gut doesn't lie. And every decision that I've made that I felt like, wow, that was the right thing, I'm really excited about doing it, has turned out to be right. And every time I've second-guessed myself and said, oh, it doesn't feel right, but I should go do it, I've been wrong. Two quick ones on that. I told Mr. Hobbins' class a little of this story this morning. When I was graduating, when I was at my sixth form, Mr. Hobbins took our class down to New York City, and one of my classmates, his father was some big muckety-muck on Wall Street. So he brings us up to the 87th floor, whatever it was, and we're sitting around this big table, and he says, if you all want to do really well after graduation, go to college and study economics. And if you really want to do well, take Japanese. So I went to Connecticut College. They have a great Japanese language program. Every morning I'd get up and I'd spend an hour and a half at in the language, doing class, and then 2 hours at night in the language lab. And I hated it. And I took my economic class, and I hated it. And then I got a letter. This is 1 month after being there from the Dean of Students. For those of you who can't read it. Dear Sean, Professor Watanabe has expressed some concern about your academic performance in class. It didn't feel right, and it was reflecting it. If I had just listened to Hobbins and looked at my sheet, look at that. Excellent, 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 excellent. That's why he's a great teacher. But it talks, this is what he says right there. You love this subject, you're doing well in it, and then what did my gut say? Oh, trust this other man who tells me that this is what I should be doing. Now, just to be clear, especially for the faculty, I'm not saying that Mr. Hobbins is always right. Most of the time. But if I had trusted my gut and I knew what I liked, look at where I ended up today, exactly where I was doing here at the Abbey, what I liked. And it was reflected there. But it wasn't reflected in Japanese because I thought that was what somebody else wanted me to do, not what I wanted to do. Rule 9. Perception is reality. What people think of you is what matters. So if you're the class clown, they're going to think you're the class clown. If you're thought of as a hard worker, people will think you're the hard worker. Perception in life matters. And the image that you create will reflect how others view you. So I would just argue that think about that sometimes, how you come across to people, and what people view you. And again, one of the things that's always interesting, the easiest thing in marketing, everyone knows, sometimes you see something for 99 cents versus $1, right? Marketers get this all the time. The reason they market at 99 cents is because the perception is it's a lot cheaper. Yes, technically it is, it's a penny. But marketers get this, and it's no different. They're just reflecting life. People believe you are, or the perception of who you are is what people believe you are. And so think sometimes about who do you want to be, and what are you doing to project that image? Because I guarantee you, if you're the, and again, there's nothing wrong with being the funny guy, or the smart guy, or whatever, but just think about what image I'm projecting. Is that really what I want people to think of me? And it's not one or the other. Sometimes you can be funny and smart. I am. See? But stop once in a while and start to think about how you're projecting it. And if you don't like what you see in the mirror, you can change it. Get beyond Cory's Lane in Newport. Again, my little caveat. This does not mean that you can leave because I said so. You still need to do. But the message that I'm getting here is, look, I grew up in Rhode Island. I went to school here, and then, as I said, I went to school in Connecticut. I would not say I was extremely worldly. But when I read the bulletin now about the Irish, history opportunities are here, and the class going to Barcelona, it's wonderful. And I think it's great that you can go and do things. But even if you don't have the money, the internet has opened up the world in a way that never was available to my class until the ones after that. But understanding how the world operates, I talked to Mr. Hobbs' class this morning a little bit about this. I was the assistant U.S. trade representative for the last 3 years of the Bush administration and traveled to 33 different countries and did 440,000 miles on an airplane. I saw things that I couldn't even imagine in terms of how other people live, how they interact, understanding different cultures and different causes, why people tip, why certain things happen, understanding things from a different perspective that I might not normally look at is important. And I think sometimes we forget to look outside the bubble that we're in. And I would just urge you that as I look through the magazine that I get in the mail from the Abbey, it's amazing the diversity that's here. When I graduated, we had several students from Colombia, other places in South America. I never once, not one time, ever asked them, tell me a little bit about your country. Never. I think that's sad. That I had this amazing opportunity to have people in my class from Korea, from China, from Colombia, and I never stopped and asked them, tell me a little bit about your country. Tell me a little bit about your culture. What's your family like over there? Is it the same as it in the U.S.? Never took advantage of it. And if you look out at the diversity here in this auditorium, there's tremendous diversity. And so it's not a question of just traveling. It's a question of utilizing the resources that you have now, utilizing the internet, taking advantage of opportunities that Mr. Billings was talking about. I mean, and even if it's religiously, I'm Catholic, but maybe if you're not, going up to Stations of the Cross, you've never been, and saying, what's it like to see this? Or going to the top of the cross on Holy Thursday. But doing something that may not be normal for you, and talking about that, talking to a monk about their religious experience. But I think that there are things that we need to take advantage of that this school offers that, frankly, my class didn't do a good enough taking advantage of it. And it's just something, again, the world that we live in is becoming much more globalized, and learning about each other is a great opportunity to start that process. Rule 11. Make good friends, find a mentor. One of the things that I found is after you graduate throughout college, you've got plenty of buddies. People that you can go grab a cup of coffee with, take a walk with, do whatever. But you got to have a couple really good friends and hopefully a solid mentor. Somebody that you can call that's your good sounding board that can say, hey, my gut tells me that this is a good decision. What do you think? I need to talk it through. But you want to have somebody, it could be a relative, it could be a teacher, it could be a friend. But as you grow in life, having that person or people that you can talk to and bounce things off is going to be very, very important. And just start to think about it. Again, there's a difference. You don't have to have, you want to have tons of friends. But when you put them in that category and say, who are the ones ones that I really, when something happens, and it's not, you know, you always hear, oh, who are you going to call when your car breaks down? I'm not talking about the guy that's going to come pick you up or the girl that's going to help you, you know, finish your homework. But I'm talking about who is that friend of yours that when you really are having trouble with something in life, that you're going to be able to call and say, hey, I need to talk to you about something. I need to bounce something off. Who's that mentor that's going to be there when you ask about a job and say, is this the smart thing for me? All my friends tell me it's a good idea. What do you think? 12, say thank you. And I would amend that to also say write thank you. There are so many people who go out of their way to help all of us do certain things. And I think spending the time to let them know how much you appreciate it is both the right thing to do, it will pay massive dividends. When I get a thank you note from somebody who's comes in to see me, says thank you for taking time, blah blah blah. I will tell you this: I will drop everything the next time they call and they need a little help, because going that extra mile makes a huge difference. And you guys are right now competing with people out there that are going that extra mile. The Abbey is an unbelievable opportunity, educationally, in terms of the experience you have, the teachers that you get, the people that are here. But there's a lot of kids out there that don't get this opportunity, and they're getting told the only way that you can make it in life to beat the people who got this huge opportunity is to out-hustle them. And so thinking to yourself, thanking people along the way, a lot of you, may not need to say as many thank yous because things are provided in a different way. You might be more, you might have better opportunities than others. But saying that thank you makes all the difference in the world. And I would just argue that you'll pay dividends in a way that you've never seen. Rule 13, your mail can always be addressed to occupant. You know what does that mean? In 2000, I had this job in DC, and I had all this money that came under me, this budget. And people would come in all the time and be really nice to me. One day my boss walked up to me and said, just so you're clear, your mail can always be addressed to occupant. They're not sucking up to you. They're sucking up to your position. And the second that you leave, they care about the next guy, not you. Think about the person that you want to be, not the position that you have. So whether you're a prefect now or an RA in college or a supervisor in a particular job, the person that you want to be should be very different from the position that you have. You should be a good person that regardless of the position, people want to be around you and be associated with you and look up to you. But too many times, people get obsessed with the position they have. And I would argue that in this day and age, look at the number of corporate CEOs, politicians, Hollywood celebrities that make a screw up and it all goes away because of the stupid mistake that they made. And at the end of the day, they are left with themselves. And to look themselves in the mirror and say, am I a good person or am I a bad person? Will my friends return my call? Or were they obsessed with the position that I had? Were they only nice to me because I was the team captain? Or because I was the prefect or I was running this? Or did they actually like me because I'm a good person, I treat people well, I show people respect? But that's something to think about because your mail can always be addressed to occupant. When you leave here, there will be another captain of this, another president of this club, another class president, another prefect. They can always send the notice to the next, distro list of people on that. But when they look back on you as someone that was a good person that they wanted to be around and that showed respect, there was a leader. Have a relationship with God. This is Holy Week, and this is not a plug by Abbot Cabinet or Abbot. But as you grow older, that mentor and friend, I would argue, having that ability to have conversations with God and talk about what's going on, too much or a lot of what you get here is Christian doctrine. And you learn about it, and you go to Mass, and you go to your prayers. Brother gets up here and says it. But having a relationship where you can just quietly go away and have a conversation and talk about what's going on may not make a ton of sense right now, and you may go through a lot of the motions, but I would tell you that it will make a huge difference as you go older. Whether or not you're Catholic or not, I would argue, my wife is Episcopal, so we have sort of she's Catholic light. But we both understand the importance of that relationship, and it's something that that you will never regret growing closer to God if you start now. And so I would, again, as I said in the previous slide, take advantage of what you have here. think a little bit about this. As a funny aside, just since you don't think I'm some holy roller that got up here and said this, when I first, my first class, one of the first, I can't guarantee it was the first one, was CD 101 with Abbot Matthew. And so we walk in, and I'm not kidding, like first day, and he starts to dance everyone, and he says, I'm going to say the Our Father, and to this day, I swear to God, I don't know what I did wrong, and all of a sudden I go, get out. And I look over and I said, I'm sorry, Father, I just, get out. So if you've seen Father Matthew, that's as close as I'll get to mine. And I said, okay. So I walked out, and I walked over to the then St. Bede's to meet my advisor. For the first time, Brian Williams. I said, hi, my name's Sean Spicer. I'm one of your advisees. He said, great, are you in class? And I said, well, about that. Father Abbott kicked me out. And he said, well, I haven't met Father Abbott yet. I'm a new faculty. So I think we need to figure out how to handle this. But I only say that because for those of you who might not have started it off well or haven't had the best relationship in Christian doctrine, it can get a lot better real quick. But so I just throw that out there. 15, it's true. It is who you know. Relationships make a big difference. People on Wall Street, if you're really good at a craft, if you're a really good artist, if you're a good econ person, go down to Wall Street and trade, you'll do professionally well, right? But at the end of it, what I would sort of throw out to you today is that those relationships, the ability to connect with people, and the relationships you have in this auditorium will serve you tremendously well in the future. Not just here, but the people that you meet in college and et cetera. Being able to call someone and saying, hey, remember, I'm trying to move this. I'm trying to make a connection to this client. I'm trying to get in touch with this person. I'm trying to get a job here. My kid is trying to do whatever. Can you help me? Can you forward this for me? The relationships that you make, not just now but going forward, make a huge difference in your ability to get forward. The whole axiom that who you know is true in life. And so, again, it starts with these relationships here, getting to know folks. It's amazing when I look at the people who graduated in the class of '89, what they're doing now, and not, a fraction of them have been helpful to me, I would say. But it's just amazing to be able to have the conversations and connect with these folks in terms of the ability to say, let's reach out, and I'd like to be able to talk to somebody about that. A classmate of mine that I bumped into in Washington the other day was asking for something that I said, hey, I'd be glad to hook you up. But it's those relationships that further your ability to get things done as you graduate. Rule 16, I'm not going to put this out there just because my mom's in the back, but follow what your mom said. It's not what you said, but it's how you say it. Right? This is, again, nothing mind-blowing here. But if you think about it, how many times have you all gotten an email back where you said, that's not what I meant? I'm sorry you took it that way, or I tweeted this, but that's not what I meant. It's not what you said, but it's not what you meant, it's what you said. And these days, with email and Twitter and Facebook, there are too many times when people post things and they say, well, that's not what I meant. So going back to think before you upload and tweet. Think about it, because your tone matters as much as what you write these days. And so I would argue that sometimes that you may not even have that follow-up conversation because somebody says, I can't believe they wrote that. I'm not even going to call them back. I'm not going to respond. And that wasn't at all what you intended. So thinking about what you say and how you say it does matter. Finally, life is short. Leave it on the field. How many of you guys have heard a coach say this before? Right? So you're going out for the big game, playing St. George's today, right? Yeah. So you want to leave it on the field. What do I mean by that? You've heard, don't have any regrets. Leave it on the field. So when you play today and you go out, you're going to St. George's, and you walk off that field, you don't ever want to say, I wish I had done this. I wish we had practiced harder yesterday. I wish I had just not slept in today. I wish I had trained harder. You don't ever want to have regrets in the big game, right? Life is no different. Don't walk off the field of life saying, I wish I had done this. I wish I had said goodbye to somebody. I wish I had said thank you. I wish I had walked over and said this. I wish I hadn't been a jerk. I wish I had told them that I was sorry about this. But in the game of life, leave it on the field. Tell people that you care about them. Thank them for what they did. Appreciate the guys and girls who help you along the way, the teachers, the monks. Wherever you go in life, this isn't about the Abbey. but leave it on the field so that you don't walk out of life having a regret. And it's not just you. As you look around this auditorium, there are people when you graduate that you will likely never see again. And I can say that with almost certainty. Because they'll go off traveling, they'll get a family, they won't come back for the reunion, you will, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a point where you may say, gosh, you know what, I wish I had told so-and-so that I really appreciate all they did to help me get through that, or I wish I had called Father so-and-so or Miss so-and-so at the Abbey and told them that, you know, now I got to college and I really appreciate everything they did to get me ready because they were right. This class was a lot easier because I got prepared. Or maybe it's your parents who sacrificed to get you here. Just thank them. So I would argue that in the game of life, don't walk off having a regret. So leave it on the field. So I was just trying to find Abbey-related things, but that was my athletic report. I was a good athlete. I wasn't a great athlete, but I was a good competitor, and I left it on the field. So don't read the bottom part. So just to put it back, that's my grandmother on the left. She's the one. And Dad.